Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you want to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 29 of A Series of Death. Marlowe did his best not to glare at the enforcer standing on the other side of the desks. It was too early for this. I'm sorry, what is this about again? He asked the uniform hyena, rubbing his face. He'd wasted too much time following the hare's scent through the alleys, eventually losing it when the hunter moved to a busy street. He'd kept on walking through the crowd, refusing to give up until he was too tired and went back to his car and home. Then home. He should have taken the day off, but he still had cases to work on. As nice as the idea of working from his bed was, it wasn't feasible. She put her hand on what had been Trembor's desk and leaned forward. R.I. Goldenmane indicated in his report that you showed up at the scene of a body. She glared at him, sounding and smelling angry. I'm following up on it. He rubbed his face. So, he had heard properly the first time. Thanks a lot, Trembor. Couldn't you have been nice and left me out of this one too? I did, but his reports must have said I arrived after him. What his report said, she said through gritted teeth, is that he woke up on the floor to you and someone dressed as an enforcer fighting a hare. He doesn't know when you arrived or what your involvement in what happened is. She kept glaring. Marlot considered telling her to take whatever her problem were elsewhere, but what would that help? I arrived after him, he stated, making sure her pad was recording. I noticed the mannequin was by the back door, and that was suspicious enough. I went in. I found Trembor tied to a chair, the hair about to claw his throat open. Do you have any idea the mess you made of that scene? Marlot stared at her. He just said Trembor had been about to get his throat ripped out, and that was what she was angry about? I'm sorry, he said sarcastically. Next time, I'll make sure to think about the integrity of the scene before I save that lion's life. She narrowed her eyes, and a growl began, then was cut off. Let me make something clear, R.I. Blackclaw. Everyone in the precinct wanted to be the one to question you. I was the one picked. The smile she gave him showed teeth, trying to look threatening, because I'm the most controlled of us. Any one of the others, and you'd be meat right now for what you did to him. There was no doubt who the him was. Was there one enforcer out there who didn't know Trembor and didn't think he was the best thing ever? And what exactly did I do to him? You broke his heart. He rolled his eyes. Right, he drawled, because I'm the one who walked out on him. Please explain to me how I did that. Surprise registered, then she searched his face, sniffing the air between them before her expression darkened again. Fine, be that way. Of everyone, I was willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. If you're not going to explain yourself, we're going back to me being an officer. She straightened, and her tone went from angry to frigid. What were you doing at the scene? Marlot couldn't immediately answer. That had her not being an enforcer? What would happen if he antagonized her now? He'd better not find out. She reminded him a little of Serene, but without as much presence. Now he had to hope his sleep-deprived brain would stick to the plan and stay professional. What had Trembor told them? She hadn't mentioned that Trembor had pulled him off the hare, kept him from killing the hunter. If he had, Marlot was sure it would have been mentioned first. At the very least, she'd have said something about how vicious he could be, about protecting someone he supposedly broke the heart of. All right, Blackclaw, she snapped, and she was back to being angry. Sorry, he said, rubbing his face in an attempt to wake himself up. I had a long night of trying to find that hare. Sure, the reason you were there? Okay, brain, don't let me down. I became aware of a threat on Trembor. I tried to call him, but he's blocking me. I drove to his house, but he wasn't there. I found out about the body he's investigating and drove there. As I said, I noticed a mannequin at the back. That isn't standard enforcer procedure, right? I went in, found the Trembor tied to a chair with the hair behind him close to his neck. The hair noticed me. We fought. I didn't win. She brought up text on her pad, and Marlowe checked to see if the recording app remained on. He found the icon. At least she was professional enough not to accidentally shut that down. He didn't want to have to deal with her again as she returned because his statement was incomplete. She read, probably comparing what he said to Trembor's report, looking for inconsistencies. She eyed him as she sniffed the air, but she'd let her anger get the better of her, and now she had to try to find his scent through that to sniff out if he was lying. It was a good thing enforcers didn't have to go through scent recognition class. One of the first lessons was to stay calm so your own scents didn't contaminate those of the person you were questioning. Who in dispatch told you? She demanded. Marlot stopped his prepared answer in time. He'd been ready to tell her about his contact in the criminal world. That someone within the enforcers was his informant hadn't occurred to him. I'm not going to tell you that. She smiled. Do you want me to drag you to a cage and leave you there until you tell me? She looked far too pleased at that idea. She said she was the most reasonable of the enforcers who could have taken his statement, but Marlot had the sense she was closer to Trembor than she let on. Do you really want me to recite the regulation that protect informants, or the one giving RIs the power to tell enforcers to go fuck themselves? Thanks a lot, brain. Fortunately, the regulations were real. Marlowe didn't know all of them the way Tremper did, but he knew the relevant ones to doing his job. He'd made sure to learn them once he learned the counselors in Low Valley had lied to him about how little authority he had as an RI. She looked like she'd still try to drag him out until she let out his breath and relaxed, barely. How did the hair escape? You look like you should be able to take down that small of a prey. He kept from smiling. The attack on his pride as a predator was rather weak. She'd never been beaten by her smaller prey before. As a hyena, she probably had never hunted for her meal either. He stopped himself from mentioning that in time. He knew how to fight. He left it vague. Without knowing what Trimber put in the report, details could lead to contradictions. She tilted an ear and made a show of reading her pad. He's a hare. As far as I know, you don't have claw marks on you. He started. I do. And even if I didn't, it isn't because someone keeps their hands closed that they don't know how to fight. Being knocked about and dazed doesn't require claws. She frowned. This time reading the report for real. I'm going to need the clinic you went to. I didn't go to a clinic. The gashes weren't that deep. He stood and lifted his shirt to show her the sealant matting his fur. It wasn't a pretty application. Ronald had cleaned the wound and dumped the sealant on. If she demanded to see the injury, that would hurt, since the sealant would pull the fur off at the same time. Don't the enforcer have prey among their rank? He asked to distract her. Don't you train them to fight? Not all of them have even half claws. She rolled her eyes, making notes. Without constant training, prey don't remember how to fight. Everyone knows that. Why did the hare target Trember? Are you asking me to read his mind? Ronald tucked his shirt back in and sat. Don't you have contacts in the criminal world? It's my understanding that you're basically one of them yourself. Ronald fought the anger. What had the lion told them? Or was this just her trying to get a reaction out of him? If the hare has a beef against Trembor, don't expect me to know about it. But you care so much about him, she said sarcastically. Marlowe ground his teeth to keep himself from replying. What had the lion told them? He told her Is there anything else? He managed to say through his teeth. She looked at her pad, barely concealing her smile. I think that's all. She pocketed it. If anything comes up and I need to talk to you again, I will find you. She headed to the door and then stopped. Oh, and stay away from Trembor. She looked at him over her shoulder. I mean it. You come within scent distance of him again and I will end you. Marlowe looked her up and down. She'd provide him with plenty of meat. He had her name, so he could add her to his stalking program. Don't worry. That lion has made it clear he'd rather I let him die than save his life another time. She narrowed her eyes at him, then laughed. Marlot leaned back in his seat, trying to ease the ache the gash on his stomach caused him, or maybe that was due to the stress of the interrogation. All in all, it had gone better than he'd expected. Trembor hadn't mentioned that Marlot had been in possession of his ID card, or that he'd received another one. Had the lion worked out every card owner Marlot had returned? Had the lion worked out every card owner Marlot had returned them to had been killed? Had the yeah, this is way clunky. Had the lion worked out that the owner of every card Marlot had returned had been killed? Probably not. Trembor would have brought that up. He wouldn't protect Marlot. What did the enforcers have? His testimony, Trembor's report, the blood and fur at the scene. They could link the hunter to one body, but had he left evidence at any of the other bodies? Not at the few Marlot had been able to get information on. So even if they looked into it from the angle of the hair impersonating an officer, they wouldn't find him. They didn't even have a name, and neither did he. How many hairs were in the protectors? How many survived to retire? Could he hack his way into the protector's database and find out? That wasn't happening. Even if he could get through their security, they wouldn't be kind if they found out. He didn't think pointing out one of theirs had turned into a hunter would earn him any mercy. He suspected they'd just make him disappear if Marlot crossed the protectors. What was left? Who might have a clue as to who the hair might be? Would the victim's family? Maybe, but if they knew anything, the other RIs would have that information, and him asking more questions would raise ears and cause those RIs to demand to know what he was doing. Then he realized there was one place who might have information. He looked up the number and called. Grebor's gym, the badger answered. Hey, Grebor, Marlot here. Hi, how can I help you? I have an odd question for you. Do you remember the hare that showed up at your gym a few times? The one who kept trashing his opponents. He's hard to forget. Did he ever sign in, or did he just come in, fight, and leave? He signed in a few times. Can I get his name? The badger was silent. I'm not supposed to give that information. Privacy. I'm an RI, Marlot said, surprised he had to say it. Oh, I remember you now. You and the lion. Right. He was typing. The name is Algarinam. He didn't put a surname. Marlot got over the surprise at Grebor not remembering him and wrote the name down. It sounded foreign, but also vaguely familiar. Has he been in recently? More typing. No, not in a few weeks. Why? You looking to get beaten up by him again? Marlot winced as the sealant pulled at his fur. That's right. I'm trying to find him and get a rematch. The badger chuckled. I wish you luck. When you do, have it here. I'll set up recording equipment. Prey beating predators, that soundly has to be worth something on the network. Marlot chuckled. Whenever that rematch happened, it wouldn't be recorded. Marlot was sure of that. Yeah, this is definitely a paramount. And that concludes chapter 29 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the other books in the series, they are available at all major e-retailers. If you are looking for a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you're looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.